Welcome back to Blake's Craft Beer Podcast. I'm still in Columbus. This will be the never Monday, but today I've been doing everything in one day, and I'm back at Seventh Son. If you were a fan of the Brew Explorers, the first time I ever was by myself with Ronald and them. I went here, and this Colin guy was very nice, and I'm excited to get him back. I'm at Seventh Son Brewing in Columbus, Ohio. Please introduce yourself and your role.
Yeah, I'm Colin Castore from Seventh Son Brewing, one of the co-founders of Seventh Son Brewing in Columbus, Ohio.
And I'll never forget that day. I thought I got all the nerves done until I had to do this even though I had everybody with me, but doing it like with no one else. It was,
sure.
But you were awesome, and you made me feel like I knew what I was doing. So I'm happy to be back.
I'm glad I could help with that.
So, what was your first way into craft beer, and what made you want to start a brewery?
So I think my original introduction to craft beer was probably earlier than it should have been when I was in high school, and I was a big Grateful Dead fan, and I used to go to parking lots and sell grilled cheese sandwiches, and eventually I got an ID so I could sell beers, and Deadheads usually have better taste in beer than other folks, or they were a little bit ahead of the curve. So I through being in those parking lots in high school and early college, I got a good introduction to Sierra Nevada Pale, and Sam Adams was just kind of growing at that point, and Cherry Wheat was coming out, and Pete's Wicked Ale, and Sammy Smith's from across the pond there.
Mm.
So a lot of good beers that were popular on the Deadhead lots, and we'd go to different cities and try and find where to buy them and sell them, and it just got me into drinking good beer rather than American macros from the start.
It's like I tell people, once you start drinking those type of beers and you try to drink macro and stuff, it just doesn't taste the same.
No.
Maybe it's just me being a mindset, but it just, even now today with the light lagers coming back into craft, it still doesn't taste like a macro at all.
No, I think we put a little bit more care, and probably some other recipe choices along the way, but I agree with that, definitely. One of the beers we're tasting here today is actually a lager, more similar to like an Asahi, like a Japanese-style rice, with rice as an adjunct lager, but definitely more flavorful and enjoyable to me than any of the kind of macro things that are out there.
Right. So what led you into starting Seventh Son?
So after finding out about craft beer, I worked in restaurants and bars through high school and early college. Ended up opening up what was supposed to be a coffee shop and carryout with a friend of mine, Sangeeta Lakhani. She kind of did the kitchen stuff, and I did more of the front of the house. And we opened up a place called Bodega in 2005. And it was one of the first. We started with a decent amount of beer, and people enjoyed having the beer, but it was mainly kind of carry-out bottles. I'd read some stories about people doing 50 draft lines, so we figured out a way to put 50 draft lines in a basement that was only about 6 feet tall and get a cooler down there and get it working. And we were one of the first 50-tap craft beer-focused bars in Columbus at that point. So I did that for a little while, probably 2005 to 2010, and then started to think that I liked the beer side more than the restaurant and bar side. So worked on with two of my best friends, the three of us, Jen Burton, Travis Spencer, and I. We got together and opened up Seventh Son. We started working on it in 2010, and we got our first beer made April 20th, or served to the public April 20th of 2013.
Wow. So why this location?
So the location, we were looking around for something in kind of the short north-ish neighborhood area of Columbus, and this was a little bit off the beaten path of the short north here. But there's a bar that's still one of our next door neighbors here called the St. James Tavern. And they were also, it used to be one of the first places that you could get Bell's Two Hearted in town. and they have 2 nice pool tables. And while I was taking college classes, it was always kind of my favorite campus, a little bit south of campus bar. Even though the neighborhood wasn't quite as developed or built up as the main Short North, was a little bit to the south, it still felt like a pretty cool place. And would see this building open when I was coming home from the St. James, going back to campus, and eventually saw a for rent sign in the window and asked about it, and were able to get it rented out.
It's one that I always enjoyed coming here, and it's so what was the craft beer scene before you in Columbus? Was there many other breweries before you?
I think because North High always told us we could use the Seventh because they opened their brew on premise, but it wasn't really a brewery. So technically, if you count their brew on premise homebrew thing, they would have been the Seventh, but we were the 7th brewery in town.
Okay.
So we were actually the 7th brewery to open in Columbus, and now I think there's 40 something depending on how you count it. So we're pretty old school as far as that goes.
Because I know you just celebrated your 11th.
We're getting ready to do our 12th.
12th.
Yeah. Yeah, I think before us there was Barley's, Columbus Brewing, a brewery called Four String that's not around anymore. Gosh, I'd have to go back and think about it, who the others were.
Was Elevator in there too, or
Was who?
was Elevator there?
Oh yeah, Elevator.
Okay.
Yep. And gosh, we're forgetting somebody. I think somebody who's still around even, but it's all blurred.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So when you guys came in and there was were you guys like nervous, or you're like, okay, we know what we're doing? And
We were definitely just figuring it out, but we didn't really think there would be as. It seemed like a lot that there was even 7 breweries in town, let alone that there's 40 something now. We didn't think it would grow quite as quick as it did, really.
Could you imagine, like today, let's say you were going to start this today, are there things differently you would have done, or about the same thing?
It's a lot more both the marketplace in terms of the shelves at your local carryouts and grocery stores, and even kind of competing for consumers' attention. Everything's a lot more crowded. So I think I think there's going to be people who still do a great job opening up a brewery today, but I think it's more challenging in a different way. Now guests know what craft beer is, and they know who you are, which is kind of better. You don't have to educate as much, but at the same time, you don't have that kind of newness to it that was there before.
All right, let's get into the first beer. Where you want to start?
So the first one, I'd say let's do the kind of the simplest, lightest beer of the 4. This is our Tuk Tuk Lager. It's kind of like based on a Japanese rice lager. Asahi's probably one that Asahi Sapporo in terms of what people are familiar with, but it's just got a really light, crisp hop character. Because of the rice and the malt bill, you can also see the colors a little bit lighter, and it's just one of my favorite light beers that we make. I think it's really a great lager.
No, it's great. It's very good sipping, and like you said, you do still have that little bit of the hop bite, but it's not bad. I definitely think this would be someone that hadn't had a craft beer but wanted to try something a little hoppy. This would be a good.
We've described it as Budweiser, but it tastes good. Some people, so. But it's much better than a Bud, but definitely that kind of crossover for your macro drinkers there.
Because you make this at your other facility, right?
Yeah, we actually make this one here. We have a couple tanks up there that we ferment and actually pull directly from the fermenters, which is kind of fun. But yeah, we make this down here.
Because you also have Getaway and also Antiques on High as well.
Yep. And so at Getaway, we bring up the raw wort to there, and we ferment a beer there and serve it directly out of the tank. And then at Antiques on High, we bring the raw wort over, and it sits in either oak barrels or oak foeders, and then we blend those together. And we have a finishing tank, or a couple different tanks that we can add fruit to things and kind of finish them off, or just take them straight to package and carbonate them and finish them off up there.
That shows how when you do like foeders and stuff like that, how far away you have to do them just to make them. Huh?
Yeah, with wild stuff, it's definitely best practices to have a separate facility. There's people who manage to do it without that, but even in some of our own experience, it's not a good idea. Got to be careful.
So when did the two other places idea start?
So we had wanted to do something in the kind of sour and wild space ever since we started Seventh Son almost. And then the opportunity came up in it was probably around 2015 at the same time that we bought the land behind Seventh Son's Brewery and then worked on expanding the building. We also kind of rolled another loan into it to rehab the space where we are down at Antiques on High, and they both got open, both the building expansion and production expansion here and the building down at Antiques on High both got open in 2018.
So when did you realize you guys had to expand? Was it immediately, or how many years before you started realizing, okay, we might need to do this?
With Seventh Son, it was pretty immediate. We got up to a couple thousand barrels or our capacity with the smaller equipment almost right away, and then it was just a matter of how long it would take to add on more capacity for us. I wish we'd gotten open a couple years earlier almost with the expansion, but things just kind of timed out how they did. But yeah, so 2000, if we could open up the expansion in 2016, it would have been awesome, but it got open in 2018, and that's just fine too.
Which at first I think people didn't realize you were expanding until you went into the back quality. Oh yeah.
People kind of still don't realize that the brewery's sitting back there. It's nice if you're up in our event space and sunroom area, you can actually see the brewery from there. And it's a good reminder. But yeah, a lot of times people just don't realize that the big building sitting behind the bar is actually part of the brewery.
Mm-hmm. What did it take a while to get used to having that big a space? Or
yeah, I mean, it's almost like when you move into a bigger house and you think, you'll never fill up all these rooms, and then immediately it's full of stuff. Mm-hmm. It was pretty quickly full of stuff. And then it's remained pretty full of stuff ever since. It seems like there's always, we added a pasteurizer recently. We added a sticker labeler recently. We added, what are some of the other things? It seems like there's a new piece or two of equipment or something that seems necessary almost every year. So it's a pretty constant trying to get something to make some part of the process better, more efficient.
Mm-hmm. How are you guys doing in space now? You pretty good, or
we're doing pretty good on tank space, physical space. You can just always need more of, especially with the cans and aluminum tariffs, and never being able to figure out exactly how that's going to go. But yeah.
So when was the idea to get a pasteurizer?
The pasteurizer actually came in both for about a year ago. We started making a cold brew coffee called Oso, which is really fun. We just drink a bunch of cold brew coffee around here and like cold brew coffee, so it seemed like it would be a good thing to make some of our own. Coffee is actually a lot trickier to make in some ways than beer because alcohol kills things. And if you don't have alcohol in something, there's a lot of other food safety issues that you can run into, especially if you're kind of sharing a space with beer and with the everything, all the yeast in the air and all the stuff going around in the brewery. So when we started doing the coffee, we started testing it a lot. We didn't really have any problems. We would hold things back and see if they were okay. for a prescribed amount of time, and we kept kind of cold chain the whole way, kept it refrigerated. But at the same time, the pasteurizer just seemed like the right way to go. So we kind of got it for the coffee, but now we're doing hemp-derived THC beverages also. So that's another thing. It doesn't have alcohol in it, and they're made much more the way, or at least we're making them much more the way like natural fruit soda. And there's no other chemicals in that or anything to keep it safe, because we want to keep it to real fruit and real sugar and everything. So to make sure it doesn't ferment out on its own and have exploding cans, and just to make sure that same kind of food safety and stability, the pasteurizer is the way to go. And you have to, with both of these beverages, there's a fairly complex food safety plans that you have to develop and show the Department of Agriculture and get those approved and all that fun stuff.
So when did you guys realize you might want to go into hemp?
So we've been seeing these beverages for about a year and a half around town. I think we are only the 5th license in the state of Ohio now for somebody to do it. So hemp-derived THC is federally legal, but on the state side, it's still really there's not a lot of legal definition to it. So it's kept it in a gray area and kind of kept them from getting too popular right now. Markets like Minnesota, Illinois, and Kentucky, and Indiana actually, are all a little more developed and have a little bit clearer statutes about what's allowed and what's not. But we've always been a pretty cannabis-friendly, THC-friendly brewery in general, so it seemed like kind of a natural fit.
So where is Ohio on their hemp?
Because
I remember
on their hemp right now, there's not a lot of regulation one way or another. What it's moving towards is something that'll probably look a lot like Minnesota, where 5 milligram or 10 milligram hemp-derived THC beverages are allowed for carry-out and on-premise consumption, restaurants and bars. But a lot of these other kind of vapes and gummies and things that are made from Delta 8 rather than actual cannabis are going to probably get banned. But there should be legislation at some point this year on this.
Will be a good thing when this regulation comes through?
I think it'll be a good thing. It does need to be regulated, and you don't. There should be an age restriction on it. There should just be some common sense restrictions on it that aren't really there right now. So, it's one of those funny things, and there'll probably be some additional taxation too. But it's one of those funny things where you actually want regulation. A lot of times, it seems like this business or any business you push back against over regulation, but there needs to be, it seems like there needs to be some type of regulation framework for sure for this.
Mm-hmm. So what's the difference between Delta 8 and hemp?
So the Delta 8 stuff is like chemically synthesized THC compound, to my understanding, and the Delta 9 actually comes from immature or very small THC content cannabis plants. Just the rest of the stuff goes into making hemp rope, hemp shirts, whatever, and the very small amount of THC that's in that plant gets distilled down into a emulsion compound that we then use, that we purchase directly from a supplier. They test it. When they send it to us, we test it when it gets here, and then we test each batch that we make also. So there's a lot of testing with it. But yeah. That's basically it.
So having a pasteurizer, have you guys looked at NA?
So we've been doing an NA beer for a little while now too, and it's let us, I think we're going to look at maybe some more NA options. We've thought about doing a little bit more with fruit in NA. We've always worried about too much sugar in cans at times, and I think the pasteurizer kind of frees us up from some of those concerns. And what we've noticed on a sensory level, at least with the non-beer that we've been using it for, we can't really tell a sensory difference between lemonade that's been pasteurized and lemonade that is not, or between coffee that's been pasteurized and coffee that is not. We haven't had a chance to use it very much for the beer yet, so we'll see.
Because, I don't know, is NA still very popular right now, or is it?
NA is still popular.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where Athletic is popular. Other NA is kind of catching up. But right now, there's kind of one category giant there.
Mm-hmm. Good, but so let's get into the next one.
That kind of leads into the next one.
Okay.
So the next one is Pineapple Express, and that is a beer that we make with cannabis terpenes, but not actual cannabis. So there's no psychoactive effect. There's no
there's no THC.
There's no THC in it. It's just a company figured out a way to use compounds from different fruits and vegetables that match the compounds that are in different strains of cannabis, and we have those in a emulsion form that we can add to the beer. So this beer is a pineapple sour, kettle sour pineapple, and then we add the cannabis terpenes to it. Nice. And it works really well together. And it definitely has that cannabis aroma.
Oh yeah, no, I'll never forget. I think it was Sweetwater. They had the 420 stuff, and I used to get it with my coworkers. They're like, "You're drinking weed over?" I said, "No, it's just
smells like it." But when you
was
pop
so
one
popular,
of these open, it
was so popular when they first came out. Like people were rushing to get it. And
No, this is done. It's occupied kind of a nice space as. We don't have that many things we can put in a can that are sour beers or that kind of niche for us. So it occupies that space, and it tastes good, and it smells good, and it's fun.
Mm-hmm. So what's the difference between this sour and then what you would see at Antiques on High?
So at Antiques, we're putting the beer into barrels or foeders, tasting those barrels and foeders, deciding which ones kind of will blend together right. It's almost more like the way people do whiskey or wine. With the kettle sour method, you're kind of souring it. We do over the weekend. People have different methods for it. We sour the beer, a bunch of lacto in there and some other bacteria, and then we boil it off after that's done, which kills all those bacteria and souring compounds, and then we treat it like a normal beer from there. So it still has those flavor characteristics of a sour beer, but it's accomplished really, they call it a quick sour, kettle sour. You do it in your brew kettle. But it doesn't have that same timeline of some of the barrels are 6 months to 3 years old that we use, and the foeders will go anywhere from 6 to 12 months, and it's a whole different kind of world. You get, I feel like from the barrels and the foeders, you get a little bit more depth of flavor sometimes, or complexity, but sometimes something that's simple can be fun too. Mm-hmm. And just the pineapple and the cannabis terpenes, there's plenty of stuff to kind of sink your teeth into in this style of beer too.
Because I don't think Columbus gets the credit for that type of sours are coming out of Columbus with you guys. Wolfridge is about to come online with their foeder system. The last episode I had them on, they were talking about that, and
that's exciting.
And sadly, with Pretentious going down,
I was sad about that. They were good guys.
Yeah, so it's good to see that Columbus is still trying that realm, because they're just such unique beers, and I don't feel like they come out enough.
No, and they're I think the consumers might have gotten a little bit confused about the category, and some of them can be, if it's not what you're expecting, or if it's not done well, or some of those things that kind of can turn people off. So I'm glad that we're still around, and I enjoy our beers a lot. Glad that Wolf's Ridge puts out fantastic sours. Rheingeist puts out, they have a really good sour program. It's good to see that people are still doing all of these things.
Matter of fact, doesn't call themselves sours, but
sour, wild sour, but yeah, it's good that people are still doing them, and I think the people who are still making them now are doing a pretty good job at it.
Because where are people at? Are people still wanting them? Obviously, you're still making them better. Are people still?
They are, but they're cautious about them, I'd say. Some people have been burned on having one that they didn't enjoy so much, so you kind of fight that a little bit.
I think the one where I can go when people get burned out is you go from like your guys's or Urban or Ryan guys is you can taste real fruit in them.
Mm-hmm.
But then all of a sudden you get one that you can tell was really artificial, or doesn't have that flavor profile that you're looking for. It's like, what is this?
Yeah, and there's some, even though there's a huge spectrum of flavor compounds that are kind of somewhat desirable or interesting in sour beers, there's also things that are just bad. Like when a beer goes bad, it goes bad. Mm-hmm. And it seems like some things aren't right that I've tried. Like just fundamentally things that shouldn't be in a beer.
And there are sometimes like how long it's been on, and bars are probably saying, yeah, we'll pull it off when it's supposed to be, but I think some of them leave it on longer than it was supposed to, and it could be any beer that, it has to be. As a brewery, how do you try to tell bars, hey, this beer probably needs to get off at a certain point?
We try and be pretty strict about I guess the first part of that is in our process, we pay a lot of attention to dissolved oxygen levels. You'll hear brewers talk about DO, and that has a lot to do with how quickly your beer, how well it maintains freshness, just in general. Mm-hmm. Oxygen messes everything up. It gives you cardboardy flavors. It dulls the hop profile. It's the worst thing for beer. So initially in our process, we try and keep as much oxygen out of the beer, DO out of the beer as we can. And then from there, for our hoppy beers, we like to give them they taste best in 1 to 2-ish months. We put a 90-day that we'd like to pull it back after that. For some of our other styles, brown ales, imperial stouts, things like that, I still kind of believe that the sweet spot for imperial stouts is almost, as long as it's packaged well and there's not a lot of DO, like 6 to 12 months. Like the flavors kind of become more blend together a little bit. They can be great for a while. But hoppy stuff, 90 days or less, depending on the style of lager, 90 days to 120, 160 or 150 days. And then other styles, it kind of depends. But we try and stay pretty on top of that. And we're small enough that we can, for the most part. We're just sending things out to Ohio. We're not sending them all across the country.
I thought you were all over the world now.
We have not quite. The plan for world domination did not come through.
Is there still a way for a brewery like you to do that, or is it hard to?
I think it's it's almost like music at this point. If you get we could happen to have a hit song and get popular for that, but past that, I think a lot of the marketplace is so crowded right now that it'd be really hard for somebody to get out. Aside from Columbus going 7 to 40, Ohio, we were in the 70s when we opened, and we're now over 400 breweries, and nationwide it was in the 2,300, 2,700, and we're now about 10,000 breweries in the country. So it's really there's a lot more noise out there than there used to be.
So that's a good number too, because you can sometimes, I know it's sad because we talk about pretentious. Some others have closed. Some so say our sky is falling. Mm-hmm. Do you see that? Is that a true statement that the craft beer field is falling?
No, I don't think that. I think that bourbon stole a little bit of thunder from craft beer for a minute. But then that's kind of cycling around. A lot of these things, I feel like they cycle back and forth between what's the kind of new thing that people are chasing after, or what's the new hard-to-get thing. Craft beer had it for a minute, kind of cycled to bourbon for a minute. It's going other places now, but beer is the most... civilization was founded on beer. Beer's not going anywhere. It's just that there is more competition, and consumers are a little more educated / jaded than they used to be, but there's still people love beer. People love our beer, other people's beer. It's not going anywhere.
Because I'm just saying, you see like couple breweries close, and all of a sudden people are like, "Oh no, the sky is falling."
No, I don't think I think the closures, part of the problem too is it's kind of the same thing with any small business. Just because you're really good at making beer doesn't mean you're also good at doing your payroll taxes and managing your cash flow and hiring people and firing people, all of these other things. It's a lot when people, for any entrepreneur, when people say like, oh, you're going to open your own business, like you have to wear a lot of hats and at least be competent at most of them, or find the right people to kind of fill those positions who can help you out with the other stuff. But I think it's kind of more like any other failure rate. It used to be that craft beer was so popular that it would get the failure rate was much better than traditional food and beverage. And now I think that failure rate, or the open close rate, whatever you want to call it, is a lot more in line with traditional food and beverage. And I think that's probably where it'll land. It'll just be the same thing of, I forget if it's 30% of restaurants fail or whatever. It'll probably be 30% of breweries end up failing, unfortunately, just because of a variety of factors, a lot of which have very little to do with beer and more with where's your location, how's your tap room doing, is your staff nice to people, is there there's so many other things.
Yeah, I think you hit that. And also, when you were talking about, at the beginning, how little there was of craft breweries, and all of a sudden there was that, like, it was you guys 13, 16.
I'd say like 13 to 19 were kind of the main
big
way, and then COVID just blew up everything,
yeah.
and everybody's kind of scratching their heads and going, well, where do we go from here? And does our model still work? And are people still going out as much? And what do I do? So
I'll say I never stopped. I couldn't wait for the restrictions to lift when COVID hit, because I got so straight crazy. Luckily, I mentioned I'm a forklift driver, but because Ohio viewed Honda parts as essential, I never left.
Oh, really?
I still went to work every day, so it really didn't affect me much at all.
We were able to keep everybody employed here who wanted to be employed, and then we had a handful of people who just didn't want to work anymore, and they filed for unemployment, and they got to take some time off. And,
I wish I did that part, but
my
work was
that was a nightmare in itself too. Like all the filings and all the everything. It was all a nightmare. We're still probably processing trauma from that.
Like my place was like, you can guarantee your job back, even though everyone got their job back. That's why I didn't take it. I was like,
Yep.
So.
No, we had a good.
So where is us in the craft industry since COVID? Since we're about 5 years, no, probably 4 or 3 years out of it, even though COVID still exists. But where are people nowadays? Are people slowly starting coming back, or is there still, you feel like that hesitancy of?
It's still not. Depending on what you look at, our package numbers or cans, 6-pack numbers are a little bit higher than they were pre-COVID, but our draft sales are still a little bit lower overall in the market. So there's still some correction that hasn't happened. I think that, like we were talking about before, the consumers and guests are in a little bit different place. They sat at home with beer for a long time, for a few years, and now they're getting ready to go back out, but going back out has gotten exponentially more expensive too. Yeah. So you're kind of fighting against, I think before COVID we had $5 beers and $6 beers, and now we're to a point which isn't very far removed where we're $6.50 beers to $9 beers. So it's, in that sense, it's I mean, we've almost gone up 30, 40%, 30, 40, 50% on some of our pricing since COVID.
And I haven't really seen many 950 beers much.
I think our most expensive beer is $9 right now.
Yeah.
And if you go, or when I go out around town, I've seen $7 and $8 beers for the most part, but going to other cities, I've seen $10, $11, $12 beers on menus.
Yeah, I've heard like the West Coast it's higher than we are.
Yeah, so $10 beers are not they're not very far away, unfortunately. And I don't like that any more than a guest would like it. It's just that pricing between raw materials, cans, and labor, everything's really, really still gotten blown up by COVID and by everything else, all the inflationary pressures post COVID.
Yeah. What would it take for things to come down?
I think it's kind of like I don't think prices are ever going to come down. It's too complicated and there's too many suppliers. Hopefully they'll stabilize for a minute and it won't seem so bad, or some of the shock will wear off and consumers will be like, all right, I can pay $7 for a beer. It's not that big a deal. But I don't see things ever going back to $5 beers, unfortunately.
No.
Which makes me a little sad because I used to love having all
That's
our
why
beers
you come
at
for happy
$5.
hour. I'm kidding.
Yeah, right. It's true. And people are getting deal savvy and looking for deals, and that's a thing.
Mm-hmm. All right,
So our next beer is our regular IPA Scientist.
Yes.
We change this beer a little bit every time. Get to experiment with new hops and sometimes mess with the malt bill a little bit, but usually it's a hop modification. And Scientist has been with us since 2014, I believe. And Colin, our other Colin, he's the 1L Colin, our brewmaster. He actually has a log of every variation we've ever done to it, which I think is several hundred now. But it's always a fun beer. It always has a relatively kind of West Coasty light malt profile. And we always try and put some juicy, interesting hops into it.
No, it's always a favorite of mine and in my family's as well. So are people surprised when you say, hey, we change it, or do people not notice it?
I think initially it was a kind of fun point of differentiation, and I think at this point most people probably don't notice it. They just reliably expect it to be a good West Coast style IPA. And if 15% of the hop bill or 10% of the hop bill changes a little bit, we notice it, or that's kind of why we do it, so we can say like, ooh, that was really cool. That added this like little bright note to it, or that added this little something that we weren't getting before. But I don't think that most people notice it.
No, I'd say I'm probably one of them. I don't. It tastes just as good as normal. And
yeah.
Do you have like other variants somewhere where you take this and you tweak it and you try it compared to?
So so in the brewery here, kind of the nice thing when we started, we had a 15-barrel brew house and mostly 15-barrel and 30-barrel tanks. We now have a 30-barrel brew house, and we have 15-barrel tanks, 30-barrel tanks, 60-barrel tanks, 90-barrel tanks, and then this little handful of 5-barrel tanks that we got. So we can take a 30-barrel batch and split it. We can take the wort from it, run it into the 6 5-barrel tanks that we have, and we can try like a different hop or a different malt, or rather not a different malt, but a different hop or a different yeast with each of those if we want to, and really compare like, here's the same basic malt bill, and here's what the difference was. It was just this hop, it was just this yeast. And then what's even fun from there is sometimes we take those beers and blend them together into something, or sometimes we find something that we don't like and just dump it. But so the 5-barrel tanks have been really fun, and it's a good way for us to experiment. But we do that especially with hops that are coming out now. That's kind of a thing to stay on top of that whole world and find out about the new cool hop.
So there are still new hops coming.
Oh yeah, there's still new. The different farms are always looking for both from a flavor and aroma profile, something different or interesting that's going to get brewers or breweries interested in it. And then also from just a farming agricultural kind of perspective, they're constantly looking at what's the most yield I can get per acre, what's the most disease resistant thing. We were able to actually go out to Yakima, I think about 6 of the 10 years, or 6 of the last 12 years or so that we've been open. We've been able to go out to Yakima and select some of the individual hop. You can kind of pick, like, I want Mosaic from this farm, or I want my Citra from this farm, and they give you different samples, and you get to rub them together and try them out and see what you think of them. So, and you also get to try some of the new ones at that point. But it's definitely one of the fun parts of the job.
So, when you do that to different Citra or a Mosaic, is there a certain different, you could tell a difference from different region?
Oh yeah, for sure. It's same as grapes, or same as any other agricultural product. Like a Honeycrisp apple in Ohio is going to probably taste different than a Honeycrisp apple from Washington. And you definitely see that in the hops. There's all types of positive and negative things that you see in different lots that they grab samples from for you.
So, let's say you take a Citra from Ohio and one from Yakima. What's the biggest difference in this?
So they don't. This is another part of hops. It's kind of interesting, kind of weird. Some of these, some of the varietals, and actually Citra's one of them, Mosaic's one of them, Simcoe, are trademarked, so they won't let them be grown in other states. So you can't actually have a Citra from Ohio because whoever trademarked Citra doesn't feel like it's going to grow right in Ohio. Okay. On the other hand, there's USDA also, or I think it's USDA or maybe it's Ag. They also have hop pilot programs, and they kind of develop varietals that they think everybody will like, and they do not have any of those rules about where they can be grown and where they can't. So that's where a lot of the different varieties that you find in Ohio and Michigan come from. And there's not any definite characteristics that come from one climate or another. I couldn't say that like every hop in Ohio has this thing, or every hop in Washington or Oregon has this thing, but there's definitely there's something to the climate and the sunshine and all of those things that that's why Yakima and Washington is such a, not only are they the hop region, but they're also just a huge produce and agricultural region in general. But it's all the sunshine and the water, and it works well up there, whatever they're doing.
Yeah, because I knew at one time New York and used to have a big hop thing, but the bad thing came through and hurt a lot of the New York hops.
I didn't know that actually, but it makes sense. New York has a relatively developed wine growing regions. Everything. There's Michigan hops. There's Ohio hops. There's a couple, like Cashmere actually is a varietal that's pretty. You can get some pretty darn good ones here in the Midwest. And there's been a couple others that Chinook. You can get some good Chinook from Ohio and Michigan. Yeah.
So the last time I saw you was you guys played host to the OCBA conference. So what was that like, being able to host it, and how far has the OCBA came from the minute when you started to now?
So we were probably hosting for an event, not the actual.
Right.
Yeah.
But I saw you at the
at the conference. So the conference has been it's grown a ton since the very first one was in Worcester, Ohio, in kind of a side rooms of the university, and there's maybe just a couple hundred people, including the vendors there. Now I think attendance has gotten up to 1,000 to 1,500, and there's a lot more to it. There's probably 100 different vendors, and great educational seminars. It's almost become like would you want to go to OCBA or would you want to go to the national conference? And I think a lot of people are even saying like, I think I'm just going to go to the Ohio conference because there's a lot of the vendors that I want to see are there, and there's it's a little bit easier and a little bit less expensive for some people. So it's really Ohio has one of the strongest guilds in the country and one of the best conferences in the country, I'd say.
Yeah, because it was my first time there, and I think I was blown away on how big it was.
Yeah.
It's very impressive.
Yeah, it's great. It's fun, and it's fun to run into people, and good kind of networking stuff also. So,
because I know recently OCBA explained to me what they're doing with the franchise law. I know they had to put it back into.
Yeah, so that was there's a State House Day once a year that we've been doing for the past few years, where we go and talk to lawmakers about issues that affect Ohio breweries. Kind of first on the list for a little while has been franchise law, which is a set of laws that sits on top of regular contract law and makes it so once you sign up with a distributor, you can't ever leave, which is kind of not the best for a lot of breweries, especially if your distributor's not doing the best job or hasn't. It's not the same thing that you were sold when you signed up. So the big push for OCBA has been, hey, let's just get this back to an enforceable contract that you can write in anything you want, but it just acts like a normal contract. And you can, if you write in there that distributor XYZ has to sell this many cases and they don't, then you can get out of your contract. But,
so what are some other things that OCBA is working on right now?
So OCBA is also working on the hemp beverage thing to make sure that that kind of lands in a common sense place. Like I said, kind of similar to the Minnesota law. The franchise law, we're hoping will get into the budget. A lot of things get done because they get put in the budget each year, and it gives some lawmakers a shield to say, hey, I didn't make the distributors mad. I just voted for the budget. So we're hoping it gets inserted in the budget. If it doesn't get inserted into the budget eventually, then we're going to still try and get it passed as a standalone bill. But that gets a lot harder because the distributors have a lot more time and money to kind of throw at this issue, and they really don't want to see it change. There's been franchise law reform in about a dozen states so far. Ohio's never first to the table, but we're usually not the last, so we're pretty hopeful that it'll get done this year. Yeah, we're hopeful it'll get done this year.
So what's more important, do you think, in your opinion, the hemp or the franchise? I know they're both important, but...
They are both important. I think we've been working on franchise law for a long time, and it seems like the right time for that to pass. At the same time, a lot of breweries are already signed up with distributors, or they're already just self-distributing and leaving that as it is. So in terms of what's going to affect more people on a day-to-day basis, I would almost say the hemp might end up affecting more breweries, but it's hard to say. They're both very important. When I first started working, or when we first got open, Ohio actually had a 12% alcohol cap on beer.
Remember that.
And that was something that OCBA really worked a lot to help change.
Are they also working with, with the whatever the tariffs are right now? Is OCBA still working on that?
Yeah,
trying
tariffs
to help that?
Tariffs are on top of everybody's list too. It's just kind of the chaos and the lunacy behind all of that stuff is something that everybody would like to fix.
Because how much of your products come from out of?
We go through about 750,000 cans. So when our can price is raised by even 2 or 3 cents, that's a pretty big deal. So the tariffs are definitely a big deal. And the aluminum is not made in the United States, and aluminum takes very expensive factories to make. And those factories, no matter how hard the administration might wish them into existence, they cannot immediately be just thrown in the middle of somewhere and started. Most all of the aluminum that comes into the U.S. comes from Canada or Mexico. And then everything that we make our beer with, the stainless steel, a lot of that comes from China, whether it's assembled in the U.S. or not. So that's another one. Everything that we put the beer in comes from Canada or Mexico, and most things that we make the beer with come from China. And that even goes for a lot of the U.S. manufacturers of equipment. They're still buying parts of that equipment or pieces from outside of the U.S. So it's really, and then a lot of the grains grown in Canada. Mm-hmm. So it's really hitting the industry super hard.
When you thought you were over everything in this.
Yeah, there's always a new set of something to deal with.
So let's get into the last IPA.
So this last one is Stranger Than Paradise. And it has Allura hops and Erebus hops, which speaking of new hops, those are two new hop strains. It's kind of fun for us. Hopsteiner actually reached out to us to brew them a beer for the Craft Brewers Conference, the National Craft Brewers Conference, which is going on in 2 weeks in Indianapolis. So we made this beer with kind of Hopsteiner giving us their special new release products, and tastes great. If I had to bet, I would imagine the hop bill or the malt bill is probably it's definitely West Coasty, probably similar to one of the Scientist variations that we've done, and then that hop bill, the Allura and the Erebus are both really good. Mm-hmm. It's got that open a bag of hops kind of pungency to it.
Yeah. It reminds me of an old school like West Coast, like early 2013s, 11s, where the IPAs were actually bitter at the time.
It does have some more bitterness than we usually. We usually go lighter on the IBUs, even with Scientists with our West Coast styles, but it's kind of fun. Mm-hmm. It's also warmed up more, so that might be part of the while we've been chatting. Yeah, that always changes the flavor a little bit too. But I really like this one.
Like I said earlier, I like where craft beer is going. Like styles of beers, like getting back to like between the lagers and the West Coast seems to be, even black IPAs have made a
coming back a little bit.
Yeah.
I like bitter, crisp beer when appropriate.
Maybe it's just because of spring, and I guess spring, whatever Ohio decides it wants to be today.
Yeah, it's somewhere in between.
Yeah.
A lot of these beers too, like between the bitterness and the carbonation and everything else, they end up being really nice food beers. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's fun. It's something that wine doesn't have on us. Wine doesn't have carbonation, and wine doesn't have bitterness, and you can play so much more with some of those flavors.
Where do you see people's taste profile going by the end of the year?
By the end of the year, I'd say that lighter styles are still pretty popular. It's kind of interesting because if you look at some of the data that's out now, and people kind of endlessly track and recycle all that stuff, a lot of the growth in categories is below 3% and above 8% in terms of alcohol, so high alcohol things and low alcohol things. But at the same time, IPA is kind of in between and still seems to be holding its own. To me, IPA is kind of what craft beer is, and it's just always going to be the leader. It should always be the leader, whether that's hazy IPA, West Coast style IPA, or whatever else. I would love to see a pale ale world, slightly lower ABV, but still that hop character. I don't know if we're quite there yet, but whenever we are, Nimbus is ready to be the best pale ale in the world and take that.
Because these guys still make Nimbus, right?
That's still our flagship, kind of by default. It's just always been our most popular beer.
And so you always have had the Seventh Son strong ale. That's always been.
Yep. It's the strong ale. So we still make that, but that's not really initially that was our first beer and our flagship, and it was kind of modeled after a Stone Arrogant Bastard idea and that kind of slightly higher ABV, like red, hearty, bitter, but still malt forward, and it had a bunch of different malts in it, and a really interested in some candy sugar even. Belgian style candy sugar for ABV to dry it, which ironically makes it a drier beer. But yeah, it's still a part of what we make, but it's not the flagship by any stretch.
Okay. So where do you see Seventh Son going from here? You got the hemp. What else do you see coming down the pipeline?
Well, I think we're going to keep going with hemp beverages because it's kind of fun and interesting. We've added pizza down at Antiques on High, and I think that the food and beverage is kind of becoming a part of what we're doing. So we're adding pizza to Getaway soon. We're excited about that. And we'll eventually work on doing that here at Seventh Son as well. I think that we will keep making awesome beers and see where the market is, and keep telling our staff to be super nice to all our guests and enjoying our spaces, and carve out our own little niche of the craft beer world. It's funny, 12 years in, we never wanted to take over the world, but we're never going to be the biggest brewery in the world, but we love our beer and we have great people here.
Did you ever imagine, hey, I'm going to open a pizza shop? Because I know you guys have been really good at always having a food truck. Mm-hmm. Anytime I'm here, you're always. What's making you guys change that a little bit?
We just wanted a little more control over the guest experience, and we were getting some food trucks that weren't as consistent as we wanted them to be. And we want there to be food, and we want that ability to, if there's a blizzard outside, do a $5 pizza special and get people in the doors, or if some of those kinds of things. We just wanted to be in control of the food, of making sure that people get great food and that it's open when it should be. And yeah, that was kind of it. And I used to, I spent 3 years delivering pizzas when I was in college, so it doesn't feel that strange to me. I've worked around pizza shops for a while.
And what's the proudest moment you've had so far as being at Seventh Son?
I'd say it still goes down to going to another place and seeing our beer on draft and seeing people really enjoy a pint of our beer, or even our own tap room, and just having people be like, "Oh man, this beer's awesome. This beer's yours." Like, it's it
Does
never
it get
gets
old,
old.
senior? Oh,
Nah, never gets old. There's it's always great to see.
So, what is craft beer to you?
Well, it's a beverage that I've spent the last coming up on 20 years of my life working directly with, and trying to understand, and trying to get the best version we can out of. It's been a livelihood for me, and a pretty fun journey.
Well, thank you so much for coming on, and I thank you so much for having me. I always enjoy coming to Seventh Son.
Yeah, thanks for having me on the podcast.
Yeah.
It was fun.
All right, cheers.
Cheers, man.